Hey guys, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and in this video, we're going to cook some pinto beans using a method that was suggested by a fellow audience member. But first, I want to point out the importance of paying attention to the price per unit tag when buying something. These 1 pound bags of beans were cheaper per pound than the 20-pound bag of beans by 24%. That's 1/4 the amount of preps that I would not have been able to purchase if I had simply grabbed the large bag option. So always pay attention to that, or you might be wasting money. Anyways, this method was suggested by a fellow audience member who wants to remain anonymous but has some really good advice and thoughts that they sometimes share with me. Now, under this method, you can use an alcohol stove and a thermos and a rotating cycle to keep beans cooking constantly. Now, a lot of preppers use rice and beans, and one of the main detractions from that some people have is that beans take a lot of time and energy to cook, and that a lot of people don't appreciate this. And I think that that's true. But this method does bring that down a little bit. So you can always have some soaking and always have some cooking and always have some ready. And I do believe, just from reading about the experiment that they did, which was very well reported and very meticulous, that this is a good method. So I'm going to experiment with it today and share my experiment with you. Now, please do know I am cutting some corners, and they were very well documented in how they did this. And we're just going to see how this works and refine it later if it's something that we really like. So basically what we're doing is soaking our beans at least 10 hours. Now, I ended up falling asleep on the couch last night, so these soaked for about 20 hours, but I think that they'll be okay. Basically, you're going to take your beans that have been soaked and put them in the container that you plan on steeping them in. Now, in this case, I'm using a cheap Walmart thermos. They used a Yeti thermos. So we'll see if this changes our results, because I do believe that the Yeti is probably a superior thermos to this one. What you're doing is you're getting your beans into the thermos and then filling the rest of the space with water so that they can be boiled. Now, likely we'll want a better method than the one that I'm using to get these beans in here, but my funnel turned out to have too small of a mouth to do this properly with. Anyways, as you can see in the background, I have some water boiling on the stove. Now, our friend used an alcohol stove just to show that it could be done, and they showed that it could actually be done very efficiently and told me just how many things of beans, 83 meals of beans, and 83 cups of coffee with 1 gallon of denatured alcohol one could use this for. So it's a pretty efficient method, and it really gets one thinking about how useful alcohol could be. I know a lot of people think that they'll just use sticks, but everybody will be using sticks and cardboard and everything to cook stuff. And so it might be worth thinking about having a good prepper store of fuel, at least having those sticks on hand if that's what you're going to plan to cook with. Anyways, you have your water boiling using whatever method you want to use, and you get your thermos full of the beans and water that they're going to cook with. Now, when they're ready, you get your thermos full of beans and water poured into a saucepan to start boiling. And once you've done that, you take the boiling water that you already have going and you pour that into your now empty thermos to start charging it with heat. What this is doing is actually putting heat into the air bubble between the stainless steel walls so that the air in there is hot before you pour your beans in, and all that heat isn't taken out of your food, which you want to keep the heat so that it keeps cooking. And speaking about cooking food, while that thermos is heating up, I'm going to be over here salting and seasoning these beans just a little bit. Not too much, because you're still going to do your final cook later on once these have all been steeped together. But I did add a bit of salt and a bit of taco seasoning, because those will be the things that we tend to have around, a lot of us preppers. But if you have other ways that you know you like to cook your beans, go ahead and try those out if you experiment with this method. But basically, I'm just focusing on getting these beans to a nice rolling boil for a couple of minutes and getting a little bit of seasoning in there so that it can soak into the beans during the 10 hours that those are soaking. But now that those are at a good rolling boil, I'm going to take the hot water that has been used to heat up this thermos and put it into a mug. So at that point, I can use a tea bag or a coffee bag or an instant coffee pouch to make a nice drink to start my day with. And now we're going to figure out how to get a bunch of boiling water and beans into a thermos with a thin mouth. And I think I know how I'm going to do it in this video. It's a method that I've used for dry powders like sugar or baking soda to get them into a small container, and I think it'll work. Actually, I know it'll work. I'm doing this voiceover after I film this. Anyways, I did manage to get all those beans in there without scalding myself. I only dropped about 10 beans into the larger pan, and I went ahead and topped it off with some water from the tap, which gets very near boiling, definitely scalding hot. Anyways, now that that thermos is mostly full of beans and water, I'm going to just put a little bit of hot water on the outside of it to get the skin nice and warm, and I'm going to wrap it in a towel and set it horizontally. Now, the person who shared this method and I both agree that it's important to keep it horizontal and wrapped because most of your heat loss is going to occur through the cap and vertically. So keeping it nice and extra insulated and horizontal is going to keep all that heat in there cooking your beans, which is vital. Anyways, these beans are still sitting there cooking up right now, and I'm going to let you guys know later on how it turns out. I hope this was interesting. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section down below. Hope you're all doing well, and everybody stay safe out there.